was a client who was bought by Amazon for £11 million.
Wow. Hi everyone, welcome to the Next Level Finance podcast. And as you all know, we love about giving value. This is to help entrepreneurs on their business journey, their property journey, their tax journey, even SaaS pensions and everything between. You've got to watch this because this is what will make you add huge value. Hi everyone, welcome to the Next Level Finance podcast, episode 5. And I don't know where the time's going. Today we have got Mark Fordham, and one of the people that I actually had a lot of help with as well. Mark, welcome to the Next Level Finance podcast.
Thank you, Zee. Great to be here.
Thank you. And everyone, we're in for a treat because this man has got huge knowledge, 20 years plus of business. He's helped so many businesses and we're going to be in for a treat. So you want to be watching this stuff. Make sure you like, comment below because there's a treat coming, especially about the areas where you got value because everyone's journey is different. Mark, thank you for coming here, as I was saying. So we want to kick this off, Mark. Tell us a bit about, I'll give you a big intro. I may not even done you justice. Right? What is your journey? Tell the audience. How did you start about from entrepreneur and things like this? And what was those big things that made a difference?
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so I was made redundant, as many people do, during the course of their business lives. At that point, I had to sit down and had to think about what I was going to do with my life, and I decided to set up my own business. I then did quite a lot of research into what I was going to do, decided I should concentrate on my core skills, which were accountancy and tax, and I set up my own accountancy practice and built it from nothing, literally from a blank sheet of paper, into a business that I sold subsequently for over £1 million.
I love how you said substitute just £1 million, just $1 million. A lot of people aspiring to that level. And what Mark's done a bit differently, he's also transitioned not just from running his own business and successfully selling it and having an exit strategy, which is huge and something, if you follow me on social media, I go on about so much because it's so critical. He also transitioned into being a consultant as well. And I think these are the things we're going to talk about, how you still help people to date.
Absolutely.
And to give Mark some justice, when I first started my business, believe it or not, we all have to go somewhere. And I bumped into Mark when my son was not even 1 year old, still in his pram, we were joking about earlier. And Mark gave me that advice, that composure. He's such a person with calmness. And he was like, look, you'll make it. Just work hard. These are the things. Look, I've gone through this journey. And I was done a post actually today, funny enough, on LinkedIn, if you ever watched it. It was about where you get knowledge from people more experienced than you, further down the journey than yourself. Always take knowledge on board. And that's why I said there's going to be so much value in this episode. So Mark, let's touch on this. You got made redundant. Mm-hmm. You were 41 at the time?
Yep, that's right.
Wow. So people, anytime, you know, it gives us hope. I'm in the 40-50 bracket. Don't look it, but I am. Right? And you then made redundant from corporate world. Who did you work for?
I worked for NatWest.
In the banking. That's what I said. Very similar. I worked in banking as well. Mm-hmm. And how was that transition? First of all, not just transition. Why did you think, I'm not going to get another job, I'm going to be an entrepreneur? I think that's so important. Why did you do that?
So I decided I'd really had enough of employment and being told what to do and feeling like I wasn't really stretching myself or getting the most out of myself.
Wow.
I'd always had a thought about running my own business. My dad was a solicitor, so he was self-employed his whole life. Wow. So I'd seen the self-employed world and I'd seen how hard he worked, but I'd also seen the rewards that he got from it. And I thought that was, when I sat down and thought about it, I thought this is a perfect opportunity to set up my own business, become self-employed, become more in control of my life, and try and do a lot more, you know, for my family.
And I think one of the things which is quite, for someone like myself and many others, you went down the franchise model, a bit like myself.
Yep.
Why did you go down? Because so many people ask me, why do you make the decision to a franchise, not just set up your own?
Yeah, that's a good question. And again, I looked at setting up my own business. I looked at various types of business where I felt I could run it and add value. in the end, I decided to go down the franchising route because it reduced the risk a bit. So my career up to that point, I'd worked for the majority of it in the back office of the back office. I'd never done any marketing. I'd done a bit of customer contact. I hadn't done a lot of sales. And so I felt that some of those skills which I was inexperienced in were key to making this business successful. And by moving into a franchise model, I would get that support and help, and I'd be more successful more quickly.
Going on this, so you went down the franchise model, as you mentioned, the benefits. What other things did you find in your journey, because you ran it for about 9 years? What did you find, especially in the early years, that made it more beneficial than, as I said, we said earlier, starting up? What were the first initial benefits?
So I think when you start up, you end up with all the hats on. So if you want some IT expertise, you want some HR expertise, you want a bit of finance support, whatever it is, you pick up the phone and you end up ringing yourself. By taking on the finance model, you just ring the franchisor and they've got all that support there for you, and that saves you a lot of time, a lot of cost, because obviously you're paying your management fees to the franchisor, but hopefully you're getting a lot more value in return for that. So it gives you more comfort, I think, and you can be calmer about it all.
Really great value, Mark, there you added, because a lot of people don't understand why franchisor or non-franchisor, but I guess it's making sure you evaluate what the franchise support is. Absolutely. And what value you get. And you've mentioned certain things that someone should look into, which is huge. I guess now you've got the transition, a bit scary. How did you, when you initially started, how did you finance the initial bit? Because a lot of people struggle at the start of their business to get the cash. So what did you do to finance it at the beginning? Yeah,
you're absolutely right, and you need to make sure you've got enough cash at the start, because a lot of businesses are slow to start because they haven't got enough capital. So I financed it effectively from savings and a bit of my redundancy pay.
Wow.
So that first year, I didn't take any money out of the business at all. So I had to see myself through that first year and finance the business. So mainly.
How much did you ballpark put into the business, if you don't mind me asking?
I probably put about £75,000 in.
Wow, and that was from savings?
Savings and
the
redundancy.
Or did you refinance anything like mortgages or anything like this?
No, just pure savings and my redundancy payment, yeah.
Wow, and to be honest, that's pretty similar to what I did as well, but I sort of did a leverage. And took a bit of loans, and because I had employment income at the time, you can easily get loans. So I did it at that time, and credit cards. So you've got to leverage and know what you're doing, very important, and try to measure it and return investment. So you need a good lot of support, and I guess being a finance person, this is down your alley, right?
Absolutely.
I guess the other bit is you've done a few years, and then you've mentioned marketing, which we talk about quite a lot, and I think we're going to talk about in a bit more detail. But I guess the first few clients are so important in whatever business you're doing. You're selling services. It's probably not as crowded as we were saying before at that time, but still you were trying to build relationships, and especially in the accountancy, tax, business advisory field, not easy, because people don't change like that, do they?
No, absolutely.
How did you overcome that?
Yeah, so I just went out and built relationships. I went out and met people. When I started, someone gave me a good bit of advice, which was sit down and write down the name of everyone you know who could be a client, because on day one, those are the people you're going to go to. So I did that, and I had 2 people on the list an hour later. That's when I realised I didn't actually really know many people who could be clients where I lived, which was my target area. I'd worked in London, so a lot of the people I knew didn't complete tax returns, they didn't run businesses, and they weren't in my target geographic patch. So I decided I'd better get out and meet people. So that's what I did. I went out networking. I met all the banks and the local bank managers. I went to the Chamber of Commerce. I went to the St Albans Enterprise Agency, which is in my local patch. Effectively, anyone who would talk to me, I went and had a chat to them and told them what I was doing, and made it very clear to them that anyone they knew who needed accountancy tax advice, I was the person to come to.
I think one of the things I've noticed with you, Mark, really powerful is the way you can build rapport up and make people feel relaxed. And I think that's always a difference maker, because unfortunately, especially in the accountancy tax advisory field, unfortunately, I've got to admit it, that is not a skill set many people have, because they're very introverted, technical. You are, I guess, a bit introverted, but you still have that balance where when you have to have that conversation and build dialogue, you can do that comfortably. And I think that's a unique skill, which I don't think we always understand. And that's what showed in the value of the business, I guess, and how you built it. I guess now you've done going through the journey, you've done the first 0 3 years, you've done this to build the business, and then unfortunately you've had some tragedies happen, and you're happy to have a conversation about this because we always try to ask. So the first one, unfortunately, was I think you mentioned that you had the dreaded divorce.
Yeah, sadly.
I'm using the D word, sorry. What do you feel was the learnings from that? Because, you know, there's so many reasons why people have a divorce. Because how long had you been married at the time?
So about 17 years.
Wow, 17 years you've been married, and then 3 years of doing business, 3 to 4 years. What do you feel was the big driver and a learning for people in the audience who may be in similar circumstances running their business that they've got to really think about when they're running it to hopefully avoid or prevent these circumstances, because sometimes they're just meant to happen, but how can they learn from your experiences?
Yeah, I think it's a question of trying to be on the same page as your partner, and you know, there are times in your life when you have different ideas about where you want to go and what you want to achieve, and that can be quite difficult, particularly when you're running a business, when your partner might not necessarily understand the pressure you're under as the proprietor, the owner of that business. Yeah, it can be a lonely time running your own business, and it is definitely hard work, and you need to make sure your partner really understands that and buys into that.
That's really good advice. And also, how many children did you?
Two.
So a bit similar to myself. Hopefully I don't have to go down that field again. I think one of the biggest challenges is trying to get the legendary class everyone goes on about work-life balance.
Yeah.
What's your views on the work-life balance? Because so many people in the current media are promoting, oh yes, you can have an easy work-life balance. What's your experiences and what do you feel is realistic? Yeah,
so you're absolutely right, Zee, that running your own business, one of the things people say about it is, you know, you're in control, it gives you better work-life balance. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that, because if you want your business to be successful, you've got to go out there and work hard, and it is hard work. And I would say running my own business was the hardest I've ever worked in my life. I would definitely have worked more hours than I ever worked previously, but it was also the best fun I ever had, and the greatest satisfaction I had was running my own business rather than being employed by someone. You've got to make sure you have fun along the way, because it is hard work. So you need to have those diversions, whether that is going out with clients for a day at the cricket, or around a golf, or just out networking, and you're sitting at a bar having a drink and having a good time with people that you know pretty well over a period of time. So you need to have those periods where you're switching off a bit and relaxing, but at the same time you may be working and building those relationships at the same time.
I think you've emphasised, and I hope people got huge value from Mark, who was highly successful, and he's understood that, and he's also given a bit of insight or stuff that didn't work in his favour and why it didn't work in his favour. I guess just for the audience, obviously now you're married again and you're happy and you've gone through a transition, and obviously that learning made you think differently, appreciate probably things slightly differently.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's where you've got to get perspective, because running a business, and I think you put it, is a lonely place, and I think people don't realise. Going through these challenges, there's so many, and we're going to touch another one which you shared with me before the conversation, which I didn't even know, and I've known you for a number of years, was unfortunately you had one sibling, and your sister, who passed away 6 years into the business.
Yeah, 2009. Yeah.
And that probably, how did you feel at that time, and how did that impact you and your business entrepreneurship and things like this?
Yeah, I was, obviously tragic time, very, very sad, and you get a mix of emotions, because you're going through that grief, you're trying to support your kids through it, support your parents through it. At the same time, I had 10 staff which I was responsible for, and a business I was responsible for, and you've got to keep that going. And if you step away too much, your business will be seriously impacted, and you've got to make sure you're keeping the cash coming in, make sure you're paying the staff, you've got to keep your clients happy, because if you don't keep those levels of service up, you'll lose them, and that's going to have a big impact on your income. And whilst your clients understand what you're going through in terms of, and they will back off, there comes a time when they need your service. When you get into a deadline, you've got to deliver. So it's quite an interesting mix of emotions to go through.
I think you've hit the nail on the head, and I think it probably been in year 6 at that time rather than right at the beginning. You would have probably, I know you've spoken before about systemization, which I talk about entrepreneurs a lot. You had to probably systemize your business to a certain point that it gave you time to be able to be away.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think, was that a big difference maker? If it was early on, it would have been probably devastating.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, as you grow a business, when it's you on day one, everything's in your head. And the systems are pretty rudimentary, but when you start to employ people, as you get bigger, as you get more customers, more clients, then it needs to be more systemized. Someone needs to go on holiday, and someone else needs to know what's going on and follow a process. So processes are incredibly important in a business. So you can go on holiday as the owner and know that everything's going to be done to your expertise. Your staff are going to do things as you need them to do. So having those processes and systems is absolutely vital.
How long do you feel has taken you from the start of the business to when you felt comfortable with the systems? I know you're never comfortable. I'm a bit like that. We're entrepreneurs, right? But when you're to a certain point thinking, I've got the process, my team sort of know sort of a little of a roadmap to follow.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to get those in place?
I would say probably about 3 years, but then you're never, as you say, you're never happy with them, because as your business grows, you need to change your processes because they become unfit for purpose. So in year 1, the processes you need in year 6 are completely different. So as you grow, expand, you need to continually review those processes to make sure they're fit for purpose in the new world. So you're always worrying about them, and you're always hoping nothing's going to go wrong before you realise something needs changing.
I think you've hit the nail on the head, and I think that's the biggest challenge entrepreneurs have, is having a process literally to review the systems and processes and have that regular timing, because it also depends on the staff and the quality of staff, how they can do different stuff. A lot of fun, and this is the kind of stuff you need as you're an entrepreneur to grow businesses. Getting on to, because obviously you had some personal challenges which are so linked to business, and when people don't really understand, but you and the business, you're one thing.
Yep.
So when they talk about personal business brand, I see it as one thing, really. Yes, you work on it differently, but it's so combined, isn't it?
Yeah.
I guess the next bit is, and a huge value for the audience right now, is the business challenges, Mark, because you've had quite a few of those, and I think we touched on around networking.
Yeah.
And I think you were a bit of a networking king in Hertfordshire, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that's how you grew your business, because you went from 0 to be able to sell it to 1 million. What is the key takeaways for the audience, if you feel that you can give insights of what you did, and how much do you think is still practical today in 2023 as we're recording this?
Yeah. Okay. So the big challenge, obviously, when you start a business is growing it, getting clients in and getting them to pay you, so you get the income. And as I said earlier, I went out networking because I realised I needed to meet people, and also in my market, my target market, small businesses, entrepreneurs. They buy people buy people. So it's not like a large corporate where you have a tick list and anyone who wants to get on the supplier list has to meet all those criteria, and you may meet someone who you think is the perfect person, but because they fail one of those criteria, they can't get on the list. In the small business world, people buy people. So I did a lot of networking, went out talking to people, building relationships, and that resulted in a lot of new clients and a lot of business. I also did quite a lot of advertising, little local magazines, sort of thing that comes to your letterbox, sits on people's tables, and then the following month the next edition comes through and they just replace it. So if someone says to them, oh, do you know a plumber, they just get their little magazine out and tell them, do you need an accountant? Well, here are, there's one in here. So those sorts of things. I did leafleting, I did social media, although social media wasn't as big back then as it is now. A lot of the platforms today didn't exist when I was running my business. Certainly Threads didn't exist. It's about a week old now, is it?
Yeah. Love it.
So social media wasn't as big, but quite important.
Can I unpack that? Because you've given huge value in your answer there. So you had networking, meeting face to face, which I think is huge. But I think the bit that probably the audience will be such varying in ages in different age groups, and they'll be looking at it slightly different. How do you feel the traditional style marketing still works, like leaflets, putting in magazines. Do you feel in the modern day, in 2023, as we're recording this, that still works?
Yeah, I think it definitely does. And you and I were talking earlier about, how many times you have to touch a potential client before they turn up and sign on the line. When I started, the professional marketeers told me that you had to touch someone 7 times before they become a client. Now they're talking about 18, 20 times.
Wow.
So the traditional methods, the leafleting, the adverts in paper magazines are another way of touching people and getting your name out there. So I think they're still important. I also think a little bit that people are getting a bit fed up with social media, and I think some of the paper stuff's coming back. I think leaflets are coming back a bit more, particularly if you can get your leaflet structured right and get the right messages in it.
Wow, okay.
Selling the benefits.
So really point about social media, because we're going heavy on social media. What do you feel? You've mentioned some of the benefits, which probably weren't available when you were around because of the social media platforms. But what do you think? There's some negatives as well. What do you feel are the negatives of social media, Rob?
I think you've got to be on social media. Let's get that straight. You can't run a business, or very few people can run a business these days without being on social media. What I think you've got to be careful of is doing too much and switching people off. So sometimes little is more, and that depends on your target audience, and you can sort of only really judge that by looking at your viewing figures and your followers and what interaction you have to those posts. So if someone's posting every hour of the day, then I think that just puts people off, and they'll stop following you, and it'll probably be slightly negative, their view of you. So I'll say that's the only negative. You just need to be careful how much you do, but and you need to send them the right messages, the things they're looking for.
I think I agree with you to a certain point, and what I think is it's not always. I think quantity is good, but obviously every hour is a bit excessive.
Yeah.
But I think it's the message, which I think you've hit the nail on the head. If it's like turning up, and I say to people, if you turn up and knock on everyone's door every day, and you're like, "I'm here, can you buy from me?" I think most people will get annoyed, right? Whether it's social media or traditional style. Yeah. It's what is your message? Are you giving value? And I think the world is now got to where, especially service-based, a bit different to goods. Because goods people can try and make their decision.
Yes.
Services take 6 to 12 months or a lot longer to try. So people want to know what value they're going to get. And if someone's providing value with no obligation to buy, right, there is a balance. Everyone knows that, but that's the branding approach. And I think I'm a big advocate of that. I think you've done that without even knowing a lot of times, because the marketing, how you used to go out networking quite a lot. But we had the dreaded COVID, which sort of changed people's...
Completely,
So we've had a slightly big shock to the world. And also how people communicate now is different. So I think there's a balance. But it's really interesting your thoughts around traditional marketing.
You're absolutely right, Zee, about value. And a lot of business I talk to and advise, they do not understand the value of what they're doing, and that results in reduced income. To use my example, to do a tax return, I can do a straightforward tax return in quite a short period of time. For one of my clients to do it, by the time they'd worked out how to log on, what the questions meant, what they were supposed to answer, they would probably, they'd be very stressed. They'd probably thrown their computer out the window. So for them, the value I was providing, they were prepared to pay for me for that peace of mind and no worry and no stress. And businesses need to understand the value that they're providing in order to get paid the right amount of money. And you need to, and you need to communicate that to your potential clients.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. Really important about understanding the value proposition, i.e. there's different levels, and having I think I did a pricing post about this. The strategy of pricing depends on what value you're giving. Doing a simple tax return to one where you're doing more advanced because there's more sources of income, there's different ways to cut it, how you can make more value, is huge. And that's the difference in mindset and the practitioner, because you're obviously not just an accountant, you're a tax advisor as well. So we understand it's slightly different, and I think that's where people need to understand that differentiation, because it's going to save money in their pocket, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the other bit that you've really raised for me is we've touched on about social media, but I think the biggest thing is that you've sort of transitioned now. So you were like running your accountancy tax advisory practice, which you sold, made quite a bit of money on, and we'll get on to all the life that you live now, is now you run as a consultant. What has been the shift in mindset from in the coalface every day to a bit now you're consulting and more relaxed way of doing that, because you're in a different stage of your career?
Yeah, so definitely more relaxed, you're right. You know, and I'm lucky.
I see it with the shorts, by the way. He's just relaxed. I love it.
So yeah, you know, I'm lucky. I'm at a stage in my life where, you know, I've run my business, I've successfully sold it, and to an extent I can do what I want. My mantra is do what I want to do when I want to do it. But I can't ever envisage myself just, you know, doing the gardening and watching the telly. And I love helping people, and I'm very passionate about small business. So yeah, now I consult and advise small businesses, startups, early startups, how to be successful. So the approach is more relaxed. There's less pressure, I feel, because you know, I don't need to have a full diary every day. I don't want a full diary every day. I can also pick and choose who I help.
Yeah, I think this is the bit that is really quite a transition. So this is like you in your 40s. I'm just putting some timelines. Everyone's different. So Mark's, just to unpack it, in his 40s, he was flat out growing a trading business, getting the cash flow, protecting his future, unlocking financial freedom, as we talk about Next Level Finance podcast. And then he exited in a tax efficient manner. Love that. Could do a lot more in some aspects then than what they've done now. Claimed entrepreneurs relief, all that fun.
Yep.
And then you've got a pot of money and your pension, and now you're like, I still want to do something and still have some income coming in, but I've got investments and things like this.
Yep.
Now I'm going to help business owners use that 20 years plus worth of knowledge of working with so many entrepreneurs to help them in that way. And it's 0 to 5 years, isn't it, that you normally, that's your like sweet spot where you help them to start. Give us some of the ones that you've done recently, you know, some big wins that you've done in both the accountancy world as well as in the consultant world.
Yeah. So I think one of my proudest successes when I was running the accountancy practice,
You can see the big smile on his face.
was a client who was bought by Amazon for £11 million.
Wow.
You know, they were £1 million turnover business, tech business. Amazon bought another business, not realising that my client was quite integral to the IT for that business. And I said to them, you know, give Amazon 12 months, they'll be coming looking for you, which is exactly what happened. They turned them away, and then they came back 6 months later and basically said to them, you know, tell us what you want for the business and we want to buy you. So, you know, I told them to ask for 15 million. They negotiated it and they got 11, which was, so 2 directors, 2 shareholders, 60-40. So absolutely life-changing event, and you know, and we did a lot of the work to make that happen.
So what you did was obviously help value the business, right? And on future income and give a valuation. And yours was 15 minutes, a bit of negotiation that you probably led from a finance perspective.
We always knew 15 was going to be toppy, but you've got to go in high. You know, if you're going low, no one's going to say, that sounds a bit cheap, can we give you a couple of million more, please? Just like when you're pricing with clients, you know, you can always come down, you can never go up.
Do you know what? That's huge knowledge. It's different scale, but Mark's just given insight. How do you sell a business for your exit strategy? Not just his own, which he did, because also you can see he's quite sharp negotiator, but also for clients. And it's so important that you have that relationship with your trusted advisor. So that was when you were in the accountancy world. You added huge value, you obviously structured that, gave him tax advice, account advice, and then helped sell them. Bit of a pain because you probably lost a lot of recurring income. But you probably got a one-off payment.
Good one-off fee,
how did you structure that? Did you have a percentage of certain amount that went to you, or what you can share, because I know some of it probably confidential?
Yeah, no, we just charged for the work we did by the hour. They're corporate advisors. I subsequently found out took a success fee, which was substantially more, should we say, than we charged.
I guess,
but we were happy with what we got. So
it was a bit like a consultancy fee. You helped and do that. Maybe that's where pricing knowledge and probably what knowledge you got now, you probably structure it a bit differently. But you also have helped clients while you're working for a startup agency local in Hertfordshire called STANTA. I've sponsored them. Fantastic. That's how I met Mark, by the way. So how did you help? Because you had a big win there as well that you were talking about.
So the St Albans Enterprise Agency, STANTA, we help early start businesses become more successful, or help businesses get into difficulties. And I had one particular client of ours who dug a big hole for themselves. Looked like they were going to go bust. So I got called in and basically helped them dig themselves out of the hole. Took a bit of time, but told them what they needed to do, made sure they did it, and then put processes in place to make sure that didn't happen again and didn't recur.
And I think that's where the knowledge and experience, and I think people don't realise that having a good person, trusted advisor, whoever that is, if you have someone strong who's got a lot of knowledge, business acumen, commercial acumen, they can help you big time, real big time. And I think that's another good example. I think the other bit that I wanted to probably understand was that you've obviously helped businesses still in your consulting world, but how did you come up with your exit strategy? Because a lot of people in the audience are watching this, they're always thinking, right, we're talking about exit strategy like it's something over there. Because you've got a quite unique story when I've spoken to you, is you knew your exit strategy from the day one that you started.
Yeah.
So
explain
that to the audience.
So my vision for my business was to sell it for £1 million in 15 years. I actually achieved that in 9. And one of the reasons I achieved that in 9 was because I had that vision. And I had my key performance indicators. I had probably about a dozen of them. I monitored them every month on a spreadsheet. And no decision got made in the business unless it was going to help achieve that ultimate goal of selling for £1 million. And that, because I was so focused on that, I think that drove the business forward quicker. Whereas again, when I'm advising businesses, if they're a bit wishy-washy about what their vision is, understandably, they don't grow very quickly because they're not focusing on the right things.
Hi everyone, sorry to interrupt the podcast. Hope you're getting a huge amount of value from this. Just going to be quick, 2 seconds. First of all, to let you know, in the comments below, we have got links to free business guides that can help you on your entrepreneur journey. They include exclusive footage from Sky TV episodes that I've done and a whole load of other content in there. Whether you're a growing business, property investor, property developer, or if you want to love the fun of SaaS pensions. Please do look at those. And if you still want more help, get in touch. The contact details are below. I hope you enjoy the podcast. So break it down to the audience, right? The KPIs, key performance indicators. Which ones did you help enable that sales growth? Which ones do you think, if you had a hierarchy, what's number 1, number 2, number 3, if we can put it like that?
Yeah, okay. So for an accountancy practice, the absolute key is your gross recurring fees. So how many clients have you got? How much are they paying you every year? And is that going to be a repeat business? So slightly different model to many other businesses. And then, what cash have you got coming in? Because you need the cash to help grow the business.
Huge.
And cash flow is, cash is king. We know that. If you haven't got cash, you're not going to be a successful business. And many businesses fail because they run out of cash. So it's absolutely key, keeping your eye on the cash.
Do you know what? You've hit the nail on the head. And number 3?
And number 3, I would say, is client relationships. Keep them happy, keep them coming back, keep advising them, keep them happy, keep them growing, because as they're growing, they're going to pay you more money. And again, a lot of businesses I talk to, they don't think about getting those customers back who've bought something to come and buy something else, and think about how can I get these people who've loved what we've done with them or what they bought from us, how can we get them to come back and buy more and give us more income?
I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's one of the hardest things because you're trying to get that balance right. I think I've got slightly different view on cash being king or queen these days, I call it. The reason being, I believe content now is king or queen. And the reason being is because everyone's awareness is on the phone. Right? It goes back to social media and things like this, because I'll use an example. You've got, the drink Prime, you might have seen it, right?
Yeah.
So you've got the guys Logan Paul and KSI, not huge fans of them, not even huge fans of the drink. But one thing they've illustrated, like many others, is that you can sell brands and make brands monetize. And that's just by adding value. It goes back to, because you were adding value by conversations, right? But that's a one-to-one. It's much harder unless you're doing presentations for many people. But with social media, now you can do a presentation, record it like we're doing now, and many of the audience are going to love this, and communicate to so many people, and they will then say to you, oh, thank you, Zee, thank you, Mark, for giving us that value. So you're touching one to many. So that's not, and that then becomes cash, because your time, Are you linked to content? Is the cash.
Absolutely. But you've got to make sure you turn your content into cash. There's no point, doing lots of podcasts and social media posts and then everyone's saying, yeah, it's fantastic, but they don't turn up and start paying you money for your value and your advice.
I think
but content's very important. You're absolutely right.
I think you've proper rationalised that. That is the balance. Because the bit people get mixed up is something called the marketing sales funnel, which you all know, right? They are two different things. When people interchange, you've got the marketing aspect, that's to grow your brand. And you don't always see the ROI on that until down the road. But the sales funnel is something that you need to keep on going to get the clock ticking, because it takes time for the marketing. So how would you, and this is advice Mark gives to a lot of people, how would you look at the marketing sales funnel from your perspective? What would you focus on day one, which you did, to grow sales, and how would you focus on marketing, those two different areas? What would you do?
So,
a bit of a tricky question.
So your marketing funnel, then that's all about getting leads, isn't it, and potential clients. So who's your target market? Who's your perfect client? Where are they? How do they communicate? So very simple, we were talking about this earlier. If your target market is people over 80, probably not going to do a social media campaign. If it's people under 20, probably not going to write them a letter, because if they're like my kids, they never open the envelopes, and I worry about what's in there. So you need to know who your clients are, what platforms they're on, and there's so many now. Different age groups on different platforms. Although TikTok was for youngsters. Now that demographic's getting a bit bigger, or a bit older, I should say. So you really need to understand that, and then market to them, get those leads in. Not everyone's going to become a client, but if you get it right, a high percentage of them will, and then get them into that funnel. And then it's all about what your sales process, what value, what benefits you're giving them, how do you hook them and get them sign up and buy from you.
I think that's great advice. How strong do you feel, a couple of additional areas, and we're getting into this one because this is huge value, and we're getting for someone who's got huge experience, helped so many businesses. What do you feel about lead magnets? And what I mean is where you're giving some value in a guide to exchange your email address. Do you feel that still works in the modern day? And getting them on your newsletter.
I think it does, and you need to be able to keep communicating with people. So if they see a podcast, they see a YouTube video, ideally you want to have a bit of a closer contact with them. So somehow you need to get hold of some details off them, so you can go back to them. That may be lead magnet. Give us your email address. We'll give you a free brochure on how to save tax and that sort of stuff. But somehow you need to keep hold of them. If you're getting thousands of people watching your videos, and a lot of them are then turning into clients, then you probably don't need that lead magnet. But it's all about conversion and getting them to start paying you.
I think you've put the nail on the head, and I think this is huge value to the audience, because what's happening now is the marketplace is quite busy. Because everyone's understood the power of social media. A bit like what you're talking about, traditional marketing versus social media, is people now becoming picky on how much time they spend with people and how they make that into value. And that is becoming so important. How much value you're giving, how much are they willing to experience before they take a decision, take it a step further, and how you've got that funnel happening to turn into a sale. And I think this is one of the hardest hit, because you speak to gurus or listen to gurus, everyone's got a different take on this. Some people say, look, never put any call to action on sales. Some people say put some say put it all the time. And the thing is, you've got to evaluate what you're trying to achieve. My view on this is slightly different. It's more of a longer term approach. I think adding value with the brand and helping people in the long term, you will get value from that. But it does take time. And if you're aggressive on the sales yes, you may get clients in the initial short term, but it's how valuable they're going to be. It's like attracting someone or forcing a sale. And it's getting that balance. Probably a hybrid kind of approach, which is
people like to make the decision themselves. They don't want to feel they're being sold to, and that's a big difference between that. As we said earlier, networking slow burn. I think the longest I had between having a conversation with someone networking and them signing up for a client was 4 years.
Wow.
So you don't expect to get a client every time you speak to someone. but it's just building relationships.
I think also if you're sincere, and I think that's one of the things that comes across with yourself, and I think that's a real important thing, that you generally go and help people and let them feel the benefit, help them, and then it's down to them to make a decision.
Absolutely.
Because then they're more likely, and then when they do convert to a client, they're going to be a better client, not someone fixated on price and all this, because that doesn't work in the long term, because they'll come with you and leave with you. You know, and I think that's the difference, I think. The other things I wanted to talk about is your approach. And I always ask everyone, because everyone has a different type of approach. What is your approach when you're going to work with an entrepreneur, you're a consultant now, an entrepreneur comes that started their business, how do you go with that, start that journey with them? Because this is going to be totally new to them.
Well, it's understanding what their vision is, what their goals are for that business. Is it just a lifestyle business? Is it going to provide them with a living, or do they want to scale it up to a national company, an international company? A lot of the time they won't have thought about that, and a lot of the time they probably don't believe they can scale it up to a large size. So part of it is inspiring that person to understand that with the right support and the right processes and the right mechanisms around them, they can probably grow this business to a bigger size than they thought. And again, I talk to many businesses who get to a period in their entrepreneurial career where they get stuck and they don't really know how to grow. They don't understand why they've got stuck, and a lot of that is because they haven't got the support around them, they haven't had the advice they need. And once you can give them that advice and give them the confidence that they can actually do it, then they will go off and they'll suddenly grow again. And confidence is a very big thing running your own business, as you know.
Yeah, well, confidence is key, really. And I think the other thing is priorities. I think we mentioned earlier, people have different hats, right? But you can't do everything at once.
No.
And that's a challenge to myself and many entrepreneurs. It's, I guess, what is in your mindset, what would you think an entrepreneur who's starting out, or in that point where they've got stuck, 0, 3, 5 years, it can even be 10 years, depending on what they've done, what priorities should they always be thinking about? Because there's priority, different types of what's their first priority they should be talking about? And I'd like to get your views, because you've got to do it in order, otherwise it's not going to happen.
I think one of your priorities is obviously getting income in, because the business isn't going to exist without that. Once you've got it in, if you've got recurring business like I did as an accountant, you need to keep those people happy. But you always need to be thinking ahead as to, okay, then in 6, 12 months, 2 years time, what do I want my business to look like, and what do I need to do between now and then to achieve that? So that may be, for example, if you can double the size of your business in a year, which I did 1 year, then I'm going to need more staff. It's going to be too late once I've doubled the business. I need to get them in before then. So you always need to be thinking ahead. You always need to be looking at that business plan and driving the business using that business plan.
Do you feel getting scale for volume, because every business is different, whether scale for volume or looking at your pricing strategy, or a combination of both?
Yeah, both. I mean, pricing strategy is key. And one of the things that scares people when I talk to them is if I tell them their pricing's too low and they're not getting the right amount of money for the value, and I tell them just to increase their prices, they look at me like I come off another planet, and I'll go, well, no, everyone will run away. But actually, experience suggests that if you increase your prices 10%, you'll lose very little business. And your profit, that goes straight down to your bottom line, to your profit, and that's your money.
Absolutely. And do you know what? That's so important, because, and also there's a compound impact. So we had this in our practice where we weren't raising prices rapidly because we didn't realise the value we're creating. And what happens when you do it, you realise you're so out of sync with the marketplace and what you're providing. And then it's a huge shock, and you lose actually. It's more painful, but you've got to do it. And it's the kind of thing you've got to do on an annual basis. If you've got a service-based business or goods, because especially now, the prices, the whole world is different to 2 years ago. But a lot of people don't have that confidence or understanding, and they don't have that advice. They don't understand looking at the pricing, what it should be, what kind of margin they've got to make, and then how much does that cover their overheads in a simple way, without sounding a load of technical aspects.
No, you're absolutely right. Pricing is so important, and made that mistake where I didn't increase my prices for a period, and then when you suddenly realise that you're actually undercharging and your profitability is suffering, to get back to where you were is quite a big jump. So as Zee says, what you should be doing is raising your prices every year. If you raise your prices 3% every year, your customers, your clients probably aren't going to notice too much. If you suddenly say, I'm going to increase it by 20%, that'll be a big shock. And current world, real world at the moment, inflation's just dipped below 10%. All your costs are going up as an entrepreneur. If you've got staff, you're probably giving them pay rises. If you're not increasing your prices, it's your money that you're basically giving away.
And I think the hardest bit as an entrepreneur, and I think it's nice to read on to the next part, is especially if you're doing a service-based business, right? A bit different to goods-based business, but ultimately you have to know whether the customer life cycle, and that's the other part. How much is that customer worth over a number of years?
Yep.
Because what happens is we've actually become more profitable, but with less clients. And everyone's like, what would you, that's a bit of a crazy strategy, but it's not really, because to give value and to manage people's expectations, give the value people want, right? You need to have the pricing at the right level, because you can't get the quality staff, everything else, because otherwise you're a busy fool, right?
Yep.
And I've seen this. I was speaking to a client today, and they're like, and I'm like, your prices are too low. And they're like, what do you mean? I said, well, you've got to look by geographical, because they're an international company. And I was like, well, you need to look. And then I had to give an example that what's happening, because ultimately you're not making the money. And that's why we've done the analytics and split the business up into different regions, different products, to give the analytics so I can show them. And they were like, oh, now I understand why you asked him to do that. Okay. And it's the pricing driving that value. Then it's the other bit that we've been talking about, which I love, and we always talked about, is positioning, i.e. the marketing aspects, right? Your personal business brand. So important. I think I've shown Mark around the offices and a bit of the studio and what we're trying to achieve. That's become so important now. I guess it's sort of transitioned from when you were heavily doing it. Still, the marketing's always been important, but it's become slightly different. And what you've got to do and try to get that balance that works for you. Have you seen that with a lot of entrepreneurs, what they're focusing on to get their name out there?
And it's different for different businesses. You say it's different for a service-based business than a goods business. It's different from a people business to someone who's just selling goods online. So it is different. But branding is crucial, and that marketing, which will help your branding get out there and improve your branding, and therefore bring you sales, is absolutely crucial.
Oh, excellent. I guess we've sort of looked at this. I think when you've looked at certain business models, right? You've looked at loads of business models. Which ones have you had, I guess, so much positive feel from when you've helped them? Because I guess different entrepreneurs are different in different industries, right? So which ones have you had, I guess, the appreciation of what the stuff you've done to help them? Was it the Amazon one, or
that was certainly one of them. It always gives me great satisfaction when you talk to a client and then you see them put into practice what you've suggested and it's worked, and you can see that business has moved forward hugely and probably far quicker than if they try to do it themselves.
Wow. And I guess, we were talking about the exit strategy, and I go a lot. So when you exited for your business, how did you make that transition from every day full at it, doing so many hours, to not doing that?
It's quite interesting. It's like flicking a switch from on to off, because you've got nothing to do, and that's very strange. And it actually reminded me a bit of when I was at university doing exams. You have a real intense period of revision up to an exam. You finish the exams and you get up next morning. It's like, right, sit at my desk, and you go, actually, I don't need to do that today. And it's like, oh, what do I do now? I feel like a fish out of water. So what I did essentially, had a bit of time off, recharged the batteries, watched quite a lot of cricket, sat in the sunshine. It's quite a good summer. And then think about what am I going to do now in the cold light of day. Well, you've got time to do it. And then things happened. Someone said to me, oh, could you do this for me? And I go, oh yeah, okay. and then that, you know, moves into something else. Hence, you know, doing the work at the Enterprise Agency in St Albans. You know, executive director just asked me to do something one day. I did it. It turned into a bigger piece of work than I'd originally expected. And then he asked me to come and help with the business advice side of that business, which I still do now, as well as my consultancy. So yeah.
Just to cut in there, if you don't mind, his name of his business, by the way, is Cricket Consultants Ltd. Don't you love that name? I love it because I'm a big cricket fan as well. We've had a lot of conversations about cricket, and he's actually seen England win the World Cup, so I can't say that anymore. Now it's totally changed, and they did it in style as well, actually. So you're a huge cricket fan.
I am.
I think you mentioned that. So you spend a lot of time cricket, but also every time I phone, I hear the doo doo, and I'm like, he's gone abroad, right? So how do you balance obviously jetting, setting around the world and providing the consulting services, because it's totally different dynamics now?
So so I love going away. I love traveling. My wife loves holidays, so so we do go away a lot. I sometimes I'll do some work while I'm abroad, you know. Sometimes I'll just chill out and won't do anything. But yeah, it's just fitting it in. As I said earlier, you know, my mantra is do what I want to do when I want to do it. So, you know, if I want to go have a day off watching, you know, England cricket, I'll do that, and I'll just work my work around it. You know, so sometimes I'll have very busy weeks. Some days I'll have weeks when I'm off doing other stuff. So, you know, I've got a week coming up in a couple of weeks. So I'm going to spend 3 days at the Ashes Test.
Wow.
So, you know, and I'll sort of deal with a few emails and do the simple stuff, just keep stuff ticking over. But yeah, no, the following week will probably be quite busy as I catch up a bit.
Where's the Ashes Test? Just
the Oval.
It's the Oval. All right, it's not far from us. So, Mark, I think you've given so much value. It's unbelievable. And honestly, if you want an unbelievable conversation, this guy, I've had so many conversations. He's so inspirational. He's done so much to help entrepreneurs. He's still helping entrepreneurs. All right, you can't get enough of helping people. And it goes back to what I was saying. Knowledge is power, and it's only power if you go and invest it and learn it from people who are a bit further ahead of you, and then you implement. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways. I guess, is it a big takeaway for you that you should do if you want to be successful? There's one thing. What would you say to the audience?
I would say get people around you who are positive and can help you and advise you. So Zee mentioned earlier about getting people or talking to people who are more experienced than you, who are further ahead of you in the business, you know, in their business life. And that's very important because you can learn from their experiences. And one of the reasons I often tell people to go out networking is because it gives people confidence. So you can talk to people out networking, and you'll sort of sit there thinking, well, they've done, I can do that. They've done it. Well, I can definitely do that. Whereas if you sit at home at your desk worrying about it, you're probably never going to do it. You go, oh, I'll sleep on that. I'll have a think about it tomorrow, and then tomorrow becomes next week, and next week becomes next month, and you don't do it. Whereas if you've got people around you who you can bounce ideas off, you know, and get advice from, then that business is going to move far quicker, and you're going to achieve your goals and vision a lot quicker.
I think you've hit the nail on the head, and you summarised it so well. It's that knowledge and having the people you work with and having that inspiration, because I've met a lot of people who are knowledgeable, they've a lot of understanding, but they've lost that fire in their belly, that inspiration, and then it sort of fades everything else. Yep. So I always say to people, try to make sure you surround yourself with positive people. It's so important to inspire yourself constantly. And if you feel like you're falling in that trap, because we have many viewers who contact me and they say to me, Zee, you know, I don't know if this entrepreneurial world is working for me. And often it's because they're surrounding themselves with negativity. And those people, stay away from those. If you see a negative client, even if it's making money, it's not worth having, because it'll affect you. And if you've got teams, it's like a bit of a virus. You don't want that. You want positivity, and that will then generate and make you want to turn up for work. Because if you don't turn up for work and try to run a business with a smile on your face, it's not worth having.
Yeah,
I think that's the nutshell.
Yeah, someone once said to me, you know, don't read the newspapers because there's only bad news in them, and you'll think the whole world's like that. And I didn't really have time to read a newspaper anyway, so that was fine. So if you've got positive people around you, you've got good clients, you know, you've got great friends, then life's great. It's hard work, but as I said earlier, make sure you have fun as well.
Mark, It's been great. And obviously in the comments, we're going to have a link to Cricket Consultants Ltd. So if you ever want to get contact Mark, especially if you're starting the business 0 to 5 years, is an area that he loves helping people. And he's also got, I think, STANTA startup agency, do 12 hours for free, government subsidies. Take advantage of it. I did when I started, believe it or not. I definitely took advantage. Met Mark, who inspired me to start and illustrated to me that, you know, that reassurance that you can be successful. It never stops. You have to ongoing, but as long as you surround yourself with the right people. So thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
Great talking to you.
And please do comment, like, and let us know what value you got from this and how it changed you or how your experience is and what else you want us to do. We're more than happy to help. Thank you so much. Hi everyone, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the podcast. We're doing this to add value to your entrepreneur journey, which is have a quick catch up on this, is that just to remind you, we've got free business guides in the comments below. They got huge value in them for property investors, property developers, SaaS pensions, and if you've got growing trading business as well. After you consume those guides that have got exclusive Sky TV episodes in them, please do get in contact with us. The contact details are there and we can help shape your entrepreneur journey and unlock financial freedom. Thank you so much.